Welcome to AI Marketing, a podcast for sales and marketing professionals that want to increase their sales, leads, and conversions through the use of artificial intelligence solutions. And now, here's your host, Mark Fidelman.
What if I told you the job you trained for your whole life could be irrelevant in 18 months? Not because you're bad at it, not because the industry collapsed, but because AI is now evolving faster than humans can keep up. Traditional training? Broken. Universities? Way too slow. Corporate upskilling? A joke. While we're busy building PowerPoints, AI is out here replacing skill sets in real time. Today, I'm joined by someone who sees this revolution up close, Monica Márquez. She's an executive strategist, workforce futurist, and someone who knows exactly why our old models are failing, and more importantly, what comes next. So, if you're in a job today or leading a company that depends on humans showing up tomorrow, this conversation isn't optional. It's survival. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI Marketing, another episode. And this one is truly, I don't think we've done anything like this. This is going to be around how AI is changing jobs faster and people can adapt and why traditional models are failing. We're going to get into that, especially the human side of things, because I know everyone on here is worried about where things are going and how they can prepare for it. We're going to talk about one aspect of that. And joining me to discuss it is Monica Márquez. And Monica, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. My name is Monica Márquez, co-founder of Flipwork. And Flipwork's mission is simple. It's change how people think, how they work, so that innovation becomes habit, right? And so really focusing on a three-pronged approach of how do you activate or help people reinvent their identity and transform the way that they do work and adopt AI tools. How do you elevate their work? How do you help them reinvent workflows? And then how do you help them sustain that mindset of constantly adopting and innovating as the technology changes? So that's what I do.
Okay, and you also are the MacGyver of AI. And for those of you that don't remember who MacGyver was, can you kind of explain what the reference is all about?
Yeah, so I've always been known to be someone who is very curious. I welcome change. Anytime there's a new tool or there's a new problem to solve, I love to just kind of dive right in. And so the joke is hand me a paper clip and a rubber band, and I'll figure something out. And I've found that has been really, really useful for me in terms of this new kind of AI age. My mantra has always been disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. And that's a lot of trial and error. And MacGyver was always kind of one of those who would, figure things out under crisis or in a crunch. And I feel like it's now where I'm able to thrive in a time like this where AI is changing everything, almost, changing things faster than people themselves can change. And so yeah, I kind of live and breathe that MacGyver moniker.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So let me ask you some questions that I have
Sure.
just preparing for this topic today, because I'm not an expert in corporate training at all, but I do find it fascinating, especially when it comes to training marketers.
Yes.
And those of you that are marketers on here need to be trained or experimenting MacGyver-like if you're not already. But kind of first thing I was thinking of, so does this make corporate training dead?
It doesn't make corporate training dead, but what it does make corporate training right now is the old playbooks don't work, right? The kind of one and done programming where they, might have this one workshop or this one session and you're done doesn't really work anymore, right? You really have to, because AI and the tools are changing consistently, you really have to change with it. So how do you really start to think about ways that the training is also evolving, where it's actually more real time and more dynamic? And that is where they're gonna, the old way of doing professional development or leadership development or training is really going to have to shift itself as well. And so it's not it's not the people, they tend to teach tools without changing who people are at work, right? And so we have to activate people and really get them to shift their identity first, and then really elevate the workflows, and then start to sustain that constant change, right? Of really adopting and evolving as the tools and as what the customer demands and needs are. And so that's what it is that, it's not, it's the classic training is really going to have to evolve. And if it doesn't, then those orgs and those training programs are going to die on the vine, like you said.
Okay, but what, in my experience, AI learns way faster than humans ever could. So why should companies even bother reskilling those humans instead of just replacing them outright?
Because AI themselves, like AI, I think the big misnomer is, AI cannot replace people completely. People who leverage AI are going to replace the people who don't leverage AI, right? They're going to either outpace or just replace them. And there are lots of things that, AI can't do. There's the judgment, the contextual, pieces that the expertise or the human quality, whether it's empathy, judgment, the expertise of knowing exactly what the client needs. And so what I like to tell people is that AI is this artificial intelligence, right? And it's kind of like your artificial intern that you give it the work and the tasks, and it's going to spit out this output. But just like when you had an intern, if you've ever had an intern, you don't just take the work or the output for face value and give it to the client. You've got to discern, use your discernment and judgment and add some of that authentic expertise that you have and turn it into what I like to say your authentic intelligence. And so there are pieces of the, artificial intelligence, the agents and all of those things that aren't going to suffice without that little bit of human intervention. And so the AI, yes, can automate and get rid of all of these kind of redundant administrative tasks, but you really do need the individuals who have honed that expertise to have the overlay of that at the end of the output. And so, yes, AI is going to reinvent the way that we do work. It may eliminate some roles, but just because those roles are eliminated doesn't mean that the people cannot be reskilled or repotted into the new roles that are required, given that, the AI has shifted where that focus or that energy goes.
Do you think people are ready for this, though? I mean, I look at a lot of marketers out there, they're just not believing that this change is going to happen. And I hear you when it comes to AI today. So there's really two questions here. But what about when AGI comes around and, everyone's predicting anywhere from 2 years to never, but AGI comes around and then it really is better than most humans.
Mm-hmm.
So what then?
I think, and you're right. There are a lot of people like the problem is that what happens is that we're now in an environment that it's no longer survival of the fittest, it's survival of the fastest. And that means that you've got to learn to kind of move forward despite the uncertainty and learn. And now I think the new currency would be your adaptability. How quickly can you adapt and how quickly can you pivot? And, that idea that, you can sit and wait for it to happen. I see it as that like there's a wave. You and I are talking about it. You see the AI wave coming and happening, and you can either be that, person on the surfboard that kind of like swims out and catches the wave and rides it, or you can wait, and standing on the beach and let it crush you. And so it's happening. It's not a matter of if, but when. And so, the research is showing that, right? Like there's let's acknowledge the risk, right? Entry level kind of the routine kind of tasks are going to get automated the fastest. But the upside exists, when you start reskilling and redesigning roles for those things where that human is going to have to come in and do that final discernment. And so we owe people the opportunity to reinvent the workflows and create new ladders, new career ladders, right? And then really kind of start to pair every automation with a skill step up or kind of like a portfolio of projects that build on judgment, build on the empathy, build on the human, nuance, those cultural nuances, those things that lived experience brings that the AI just doesn't have. And so we owe that to the people to understand, like, how is it that you need to reinvent yourself? And that is a behavioral change, right? And like you said, people aren't ready. And we know that actions will happen first. You have to take the action and then your behavior or your sentiment will change, that will follow. And so it's one of those things where you're going to have to go through the motion, of learning to embrace AI or to kind of kick the tires and start testing it out and trying it out till you build the trust in the tool that you realize it's going to enhance your work opposed to replace your work.
Yeah, I just take a much more cynical view of this. I
hear
think
you.
it's gonna happen. Yeah, I mean, I'm already starting to see AI agents be more proactive and replacing especially copywriters and coders. And I don't know what level of training you could have, except for training them how to use the AI. I would give you that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. Okay, so the way I see it, the end game is AGI and ASI hit within 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, your advice is spot on for the next couple of years. But when they're smarter than us and they learn faster and they have bodies that don't die, because when you put them into robots, then we either need to become augmented ourselves, with some AI. I don't know if it's a brain cap or some people might opt for something inside the brain.
A chip or something, yeah.
I couldn't keep up with it. I know
Elon's already beating us there, right? There's already chips being implanted, so.
yeah, Elon's working on that. So it's going to be interesting. And then if you do have something like that, then you learn instantly. But that's still far fetched. Nobody knows for sure if we're ever going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But we do know that AI is improving at a very rapid pace. I like to tell people it hasn't even been 2 years since ChatGPT 3 came out. And
Right.
it's changed everything. And I do mean everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot that you can't use AI for. And it's only accelerating. I mean, if you've looked at what Google Veo 3 is doing, and now they're
Mm-hmm.
called Banana. I mean, it's unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
the things that they're putting out, indistinguishable from real life. So I almost look at it as, yeah, you could train them all you want, but at some point, AI is going to be better than us at almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, okay, well, could they be better humans than us and understand human nature better? That's still a question mark in my mind because I'm always thinking as a marketer, not some of the other fields that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
But so training, I think, would be needed in order to how to best utilize and direct these AI solutions. But that's 5-10 years from now. So I'll pull back and move the horizon back to 1 or 2 years. And
Yeah.
your advice is sound. So my next question is, why does so much of the traditional training fail to stick or move the needle? Now I've had training programs that have totally changed my career trajectory, but I'll tell you that
Mhm.
most don't. And so what is it that AI could do to help ensure that more of that training sticks and moves the needle?
That's a really great question. And what it is where training tends to fail is because there is this idea of like the one and done, or let's do a 2-day training, or let's do a 3-day kind of like accelerator workshop. And from tapping into my kind of learning theory and adult learning background is that there's the Ebbinghaus effect where 72 hours after have sat through some sort of workshop or learning course, if you don't apply it, you will forget it, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. And you lose 80% of what you've learned or listened to if you don't actually start to apply it. And I think where you start to shift from building kind of leveraging AI where you are creating agents that are nudging you and helping you along the way, where they're reinforcing the learning or reinforcing some of these workflows for you to continue doing and having more efficient, better output on that. And so I do think that, leveraging AI, kind of like you've heard kind of like these tools like Duolingo and all of these things that start having these nudges where you're learning kind of like these micro lessons or like micro bites of information where it is more palatable and it's more current. So repetition causes retention and people will learn better. And I think that is where kind of the older training of the one and done, or here's like this data dump of information that we're going to give you in a matter of, 24 hours. You don't retain it. You just don't retain it if you don't find ways to apply it through there. And so I believe that AI, kind of what we've been doing in terms of the reinforcement, the platform, we've created this tool called Flippy, the AI change agent that will deliver nudges so that adoption becomes habit and not just hype, right? And really then, being able to measure that adoption rate of, here's your benchmark before you started using AI as an augmented tool to help you do work. And here is the benchmark afterward. Like, what is, the benchmark, and here's the delta afterwards of how much productivity or the quality of work or the quantity of work that is now being produced without, with AI opposed to without.
Okay, so I mean, that's very interesting. I don't know a lot about your platform because it's still in stealth mode. I would see ideally that it would just looking at everything you're doing and coaching you along the way. So kind of this coach,
Yes. Yes.
hey, remember this, remember that, and do this or do that. And it's just, I don't know, embedded within your computer. I don't know how you do it, but looking at everything and just nudging you, like you said, to do, to be the most efficient. So that to me would be the best way to do it. I mean, I'm no expert though. So those listening, I'm not an expert.
But you're on the right path in terms of, really learning to leverage AI in terms of if you have a brand new task, like if your work is constantly changing day to day, having this, companion, this AI companion that you trust to say, hey, how might we solve this in the most efficient way? What tools or, what can you help me do, and what am I going to need to do? Really kind of having that where you aren't necessarily trying to dive in first and, and do the work, where you kind of start to realize you're having to backtrack because you missed a couple of things, or you should have taken a different route in the first place. I think this is where you start to kind of have that, for lack of a better term, educated guess on how you should solve it, of like, oh, wait a minute, let me step back for a minute and let me assess with, with AI how I might solve this faster, more efficiently, and better, come out with a better solution.
Yeah, my son's building, and actually it's quite cool, an inside sales solution that replaces some inside sales and lets inside sales leverage it in other situations.
Uh-huh.
He's constantly going to AI and asking it. It's not proactive yet, but asking it how he can figure something out. And I'm saved weeks, if not months, from being able to ask it, look at the code and tell me why this isn't working type of.
Yes. Yeah. The vibe coding. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. But that brings up another question I have is, if AI makes today's skill set irrelevant in 18 months because everything's being offloaded to AI, does lifelong learning even mean anything anymore?
I think yes. I mean, I think the lifelong learning really is how do you embed, learning or doing with AI? Like, how does it become kind of second nature for you? And you're constantly learning, new ways of doing this, or manipulating the AI to help you, do that. I feel like AI actually makes me more creative. I'm a creative at heart, like organically, but there are times where I'll give it an idea of what I want to do, and then I'll challenge it to give me more ideas, and then it'll give me additional ideas that'll even just amplify my creativity. And so we have to really start to think about how do you shift your identity so that you can really see yourselves, instead of seeing yourself as kind of task doers or completing tasks, of really starting to design systems and workflows that'll help you create to solve better, right? Like, how do I solve this puzzle in the most creative way? And so I think lifelong learning just almost gets, it becomes a verb, a verb that you do every day with AI, opposed to seeing it as let the AI think for me. I think it's you really planting the seed in what it is that you are wanting to do to learn, and have AI distill it for you so that it's actually much more palatable and you can move faster, right? Because I think that's what happens with us sometimes, is that we can get into this analysis paralysis or the lifelong learning where people are constantly seeking out these new certifications, but they take all this knowledge and they don't apply it. I think where AI helps is that AI will help you apply and take action much faster because it'll synthesize it for you and like, hey, do these steps.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's true for now. I don't know what it's going to be like in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take on a lot more of what we do today. And I just wonder how this all progresses. Okay, well, last question. Let's say you were designing the workforce of 2030 from scratch, 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you even include humans in the equation or just AI plus a handful of supervisors?
That's a really great question. I think you have to include humans only because I do believe that, the AI has these learning models have to learn from something, right? And you sometimes hear, I do believe like to move faster, you do have to kind of like leverage the technology. But I was just recently reading, the biography of Elon Musk, and it was really interesting to hear how, you know, he, of course, automated his entire kind of assembly line for Tesla. Robots were doing all of the work, and he had people on the line that would like make sure that the robots wouldn't get stuck and all of these things. But the interesting thing was, is there was a point where he realized that the robot was taking more time to assemble certain pieces or certain parts because it was misaligned in a certain way, and he realized that humans could come in and actually stick the screw in the hole much faster than having to recalibrate and do all of these things. And so I do think that there's always going to be something where we have to think back, like just think back into kind of like first principles thinking of like not everything is going to be better done by a robot or done by AI. There are certain things where humans can discern, and really sometimes the logic that you apply where you switch really quickly and say, hey, square peg and round hole, and I could do this faster, I could pick up a different tool and do this a lot faster. So I do think that in order to be more efficient, you would probably sit there and say, let me, I can't get rid of all humans. It may be a handful of humans, but I think you may find as you start to go back to first principles thinking and say, what is the outcome and how do we get there faster? And it be okay to change your mind to say like, actually, we need a human to do this piece of it. And so, like I said, I think I think in the evolution of the workplace, we've always seen where new roles evolve that humans have to take on. And so I don't think we're going to know those right now. We can't I don't have a crystal ball to say like, oh, these people who were coming in the beginning, where, this was where these humans were having to repot them and reskill them and say, now you're going to do this QA of the process. Instead of you being in the beginning of the process, you're going to step in the middle or the end of the process, but we still need the human to do some sort of quality assurance to make sure that the AI hasn't kind of gone off its rails.
Wonderful. I want to thank you for being on the show and let everyone know that, here's the hard truth. AI doesn't wait for you to adapt.
No.
Budget doesn't care about your job title. So you either have to evolve with it or get replaced by those who do. I think that's clear. You've heard it guest after guest after guest. And Monica just laid out why the way we train people today is, needs to be updated. And today it's obsolete, and why leaders who ignore this are going to walk their companies off a cliff, so to speak. So the question is, will you be relevant in 2026, 2027, 2028? Or will AI have already passed you by? Think about it and then do something about it. And then connect with Monica on LinkedIn. Her
Yes.
information will be in the show notes because trust me, you might want her in your corner when the next wave hits. Monica, I'll turn it over to you for some final thoughts. Let people know how to reach you and what you're working on. I know you hinted at it earlier. The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Mark. As I mentioned, we are in the beginning stealth mode of Flipwork, where we've been really working with a few key clients on how do you help people adopt AI and really reinvent the way that they do work. And so, as I truly believe right now is AI is not going to replace people, but it's going to replace people and organizations that don't reinvent how they do work. And our job as leaders is to help create that new way of working, and make it easy for people to adopt. And so I do it in a lot of different ways of, really kind of working in with organizations, consulting and partnering with them. But I also have a weekly newsletter. It's called AI. Kind of everybody's fearing it, and I can hear my grandmother and my family whenever I talk about AI. They're like AI. They're afraid of it. So I was like, what better title than that? But I release it every Sunday. You can go to my website at themonicamarquez.com. You can subscribe to that newsletter, and every week I share. It's a 5-minute read of what are the new trends in AI. I share prompts and new tools and ways to kind of reinvent the way that you do work, so that you can kind of start to get used to partnering with AI in everything that you do. So again, I appreciate it, and be on the lookout for Flipwork, and we'll be launching hopefully in the next couple of months publicly, and you'll see more and more about Flipwork and how it's helping people transform themselves in the AI age.
Thanks, Monica.
Sure, thank you.